Hey everyone, welcome to Crushing Classical, redefining a thriving classical music career. I'm Tracy Friedlander, and today is the first episode of our new series, The Starting Line. On this series, I will be interviewing musicians who are just getting started creating unique careers in classical music. How do they do it? What qualities help them succeed? What have they learned so far in the process? Today, I'm interviewing trumpet player Caleb Wiebe, who is founding member of the group The Brass Project, a brass sextet he formed while in grad school at Curtis. They stayed together after graduating, and they've been at it for 2 years. Caleb and I talk about the challenges of starting a group, staying together, and one of the key ingredients to having a successful chamber ensemble. He also shares what he learned about himself and the kind of performer he wants to be, and how he got those answers. Let's get started. Hey, Caleb, how are you? Welcome to the Crushing Classical and our new Starting Line series. You're the first one on here.
Wow, I am honored. Hi, Tracy. It's great to talk to you again.
Thanks so much for being on. So, I wanted to have you on the show because you are a co-founder of a chamber group called The Brass Project, and you're developing your career now also as a teaching artist. So, tell me this, you're only 26, right?
That's right,
Okay,
26.
and you've already got this thing started that you've created. So, would you tell me three traits that you have that have made you know you could do this?
Yeah, well, I think just right off the bat, making it clear that I actually I was a founding member of the Brass Project,
Hmm.
and I'll give you a little background about what we are and what we do in
Okay.
just a little bit. Um, But really, it was some other people in the group that really had the idea and approached me in the process about creating this group. And I mean, I think just as a group, I think some of the three traits that we have had that enabled us to do this was a willingness to collaborate.
Hmm.
Um, an openness to say yes to really big projects, which I'll share about in a little bit.
Okay.
And let me think, maybe two others, remaining committed to always moving forward and
Yeah.
progressing and getting better at what we're doing just throughout the entire process. And then I think finally is just accepting help from others. And we've had many mentors throughout our very early stages, and I think that was essential to
Yeah.
helping us get off our feet. So,
I could see that, especially, you mentioned remaining committed. That's kind of a hard one, because things come up and people get busy. I think that's the biggest thing I hear people complain about, and I've run into it myself, where you're trying to get something started and then you run into like the holidays, or
oh,
maybe in
absolutely.
college it's finals time or something like that. So, how did you navigate that? Did you ever find that anyone was like, "Oh, I'm too busy, I can't even find," or like you have a
Oh, yeah. I mean, so just a little background. The Brass Project is a brass sextet,
okay.
six of us, and we decided to form this group. We were all students at Curtis Institute of Music at the time,
Hmm.
and several of us had heard a talk by John Batiste of The Late Show with Stephen Colbert,
Oh, cool.
and he did a talk at Curtis, and one of the most interesting things he said was he was talking about forming his band and the importance of forming a group with people that you want to be around. I mean, it's a
Mm.
simple concept, but it's I mean, so much of the time I feel like groups are and I have been guilty of this in the past too, trying to set up groups where with all the best players.
Right.
And I mean, the playing was all, everyone in the group is a great player, but we made sure just right from the beginning, the most important thing was creating the group around who do we like being around, and who do we want to spend a lot of time with. So that was kind of how the group, the very basic idea of how we started this group.
That is so interesting because I think so often, myself included, like you just go in there and you think, okay, who are the best people that I would possibly want to play with? I just want this
Absolutely.
to be
Oh, yeah.
amazing. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think the most interesting thing is, like if you select people based on who you want to be around, uh, there's so much that you can learn throughout the process over time, just from each other. I mean, I look at the amount of progress that I personally have made. When I entered the group, I actually felt like I was the weakest link, and which was, I was like, well, why are they asking me to be in this group at first? And then I realized that, we got along really well and everyone was very supportive. And so we just finished our second full year of being together as a sextet. And I mean, I look back and I think I've made more progress as a musician over the past 2 years than ever before, and
Wow.
in conservatory. So I think it speaks volumes to that idea of selecting people based on who you want to work with.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, what do you think is it just the camaraderie or is it just like the positive working environment maybe that you think that leads to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously you're going to spend lots of time with these people. And so for us, I mean, I would say we're all very, very good friends, and we like to hang out just even when we're not rehearsing. And actually, I think we've realized throughout the past 2 years that that's actually very essential, that even during very busy times, or if we're doing a residency somewhere where we're together for 3 weeks, it's essential that we get our time together just like hanging out. Because if we're just in, doing rehearsals and or recordings or whatever, and things can get really overly serious. And we've realized that then that actually affects the music making.
Interesting. So did you make you like consciously made that decision when you were out doing a lot of work? You were like,
We
wait,
did,
guys. Yeah.
There would be times or rehearsals that, rehearsing, especially late at night or after a long day, or we just had to find the time to do that. Especially, I mean, I think it goes back to what we were saying at first, remaining committed to moving forward, and one of those things is finding times to meet. And when we were all students at Curtis, it was there were times where we would have to rehearse at 10:30 at night, and no one really wants to be there at that time. But I think when it starts to get very when rehearsals start to become a drag and people are not in a good mood, we've realized that the best solution for us is we're like, okay, we just need to we need to stop and we need to go chill. We need to go drink a beer or whatever. As a group, or do something else. So
it's just like a relationship, like a marriage,
Yeah.
When you realize you haven't actually had a date in a long time,
Yeah,
you're just like,
right.
You gotta reconnect as people as opposed
Absolutely.
to just as musicians doing a job.
Definitely.
That's so interesting. What if orchestras did that? Like, not just little, I mean, obviously it doesn't, there's so many people in an orchestra.
There's so many people. That's the thing, the unique thing about the nature of the beast.
Yeah, but it reminds me, I went to a jazz concert with this pianist named VJ Iyer. I don't know if you've heard of him.
No,
but
I haven't.
he's so great. And we went last fall, I think, and one of the things he said from the stage was, I am playing with these 9 musicians are my favorite people and favorite musicians on this planet, and I'm playing with them right now. And I just thought, wow, like how many classical musicians can say that?
Well,
None,
it just makes
probably.
it so much more fun too. I mean,
yeah,
it's less. I mean, sure, there are always times that it's going to feel like work, but a lot of times there are a lot of times that do. But then also, just so much of the time, it's just like, wow, this is amazing.
Right.
We get to play music that we want to play together, and it's a very unique experience, and I think we've grown a lot. Our relationship with each other definitely has grown because of that, just simple fact of creating all these different experiences together.
That's great. So you mentioned playing music that you want to play, and you also said you're a brass sextet. So
Yes.
I know there's not like there. I'm sure there is some rep, but there's not a ton.
That's right. There's
So
not very much rep
yeah.
for brass sextet. So early on, I think we were in kind of the right place at the right time for all this to fall into place. But we decided on brass sextet we took the standard brass quintet instrumentation, which is 2 trumpets, French horn, trombone, tuba, and we decided to add 1 extra trombone.
Okay.
And we did that mostly because we feel like that kind of evens out the highs and the lows of the traditional quintet, and just by adding that 1 extra trombone, it just creates such a deeper, fuller sound.
Cool.
Fat with a PH, if you will. So that's kind of how we decided to go with brass sextet. And then it was also at a very, I think, interesting time where we were working in collaboration with, right from the very beginning, a composer studying at Curtis named DiBerardino. And great guy, and honestly, he's the 7th member of our group. So we are a brass sextet, but we have 7 members. And so he was doing this project through Curtis, where he was commissioning, doing a large number of commissions. He's a very interesting guy. He's brilliant. He started studying at Princeton for his undergrad, not in music, and then since then went to Oxford for music, Yale, and then now is at Curtis. So he has built up a ton of incredible mentors over the years, and so through this project, he wrote, I think, about 40 to 45, maybe even more, I'm not exactly sure the number, but he wrote 40 to 50 people asking for short miniature compositions, so 1 to 5 minute pieces, and so this was going on, and he initially was going to collaborate with the string quartet in residence at Curtis, and then maybe also some other groups to split up the workload.
Okay, so essentially you said, so he was writing for you, and then he reached out to all of his contacts as well?
Yeah, the main part was actually, he has written for us, but his project was more the behind the scenes, actually doing all that work that goes into the commissioning.
Oh.
So reaching out to all these composers around the world, and inviting them to write for. Well, what we decided was for our ensemble, we decided to take the whole load, whatever came in. And so basically, we were very lucky. We did not pay for the commissions, but we offered. We invited composers to write for our brass sextet, and with the understanding that we would premiere their work in recitals and also record their work.
Okay, if you chose it, or just hands down, whoever? Hands down,
whoever responded.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, so we did not know what to expect. I think initially we were hoping to receive, maybe 10 works. And it was amazing. They started streaming in, starting in February. I think that would have been February 2016.
Okay.
And they started coming in all the way until late April. And we received 32 pieces for brass sextet or some subset of that. And so we were shocked at how many pieces were coming in.
Yeah. So was this like, you're kind of a little bit giving some of the creative, I don't know, control over to whoever decides to send you music, right?
That's right. For this project, it was there were, very minimal constraints. It was one to 3 to 4 minutes, 4 or 5, and so we got. I think we were very interested to see what would come back.
Yeah.
And so I think initially, okay, so we decided that in May we were going to present all of these as one giant world premiere. And we ended up giving 2-hour recitals back to back, I think early May. And so it was, back to remaining committed. We were learning every single rehearsal leading up to that. We were learning a new piece.
Oh my gosh.
Or two. And it was crazy. Like, we were looking back at it. I don't think we'll ever do something quite like it, just for the fact that we weren't really able to give each piece the attention that we really wanted to, or would expect ourselves to before a performance.
But you didn't give yourself a lot of time to learn 30 pieces. Like, you got them.
Well, exactly. I mean, we didn't know we had no idea that many people would respond. And the interesting thing was Nick, he wrote some incredibly well-known composers, and his professors at Yale, and various other people who have very successful careers. And we were shocked that most of them, if not agreeing to actually write the piece, they were all interested in what we were doing. And so I think that was one of the very big things that we took away, is the power of just asking. Like,
Wow.
No one was put off by the fact that we were asking for this. I mean, if you create a product that will, there's something good for both them and us. We have these new pieces, but we're premiering their works and also giving them a recording. And also, a lot of these composers hadn't written for brass before, which was interesting. So I think they also felt like it was an opportunity for them to compose and experiment with a piece, and it doesn't take all that long to compose a 1 to 4 minute piece. And then they knew they were going to get a high quality recording back.
Yeah, that's so valuable, because to just know that, to learn that piece of information from this process is just so valuable, because just the fact that you're starting a conversation about something, and then you get this result. It's really great.
Yeah,
Like, you realized, I mean, maybe before you asked, you're like, oh, these people are busy. I mean, who knows what you were thinking before you did it? You might have been if I'm thinking about what I would be thinking, gee, is it okay to ask without offering pay and this and that and the other? And you just said, forget it. We're just going to ask and see what happens, and offer them something in return, a recording and a performance, a world premiere of it. So that's great.
And, I think even the people that didn't send a piece, like I said, they were interested, and they were, maybe just too busy. But yeah, we were shocked at both the number and also just the quality of pieces.
Very cool. That's very cool. So in Curtis, through the program, I'm assuming it was. Did you have like a program that you started the brass project with, or was it just a bunch of friends that were at Curtis who did it?
Kind of both. So there's a program at Curtis called the Community Artist Program, where undergrads are required to take 1 semester, and in this program, it's a 1 semester course where they get to develop unique performance projects that in some way engage with the community. And so we formed this sextet kind of while 2 people were in this program. So Nick DiBerardino, the composer, was doing all those commissions.
Okay.
And then also our horn player Eric was in the program and had created a project that where we went to South Philadelphia High School that years ago had an incredible music program, but then due to cuts, there was literally no music program at the school when we started going there. Previous years, and they had just started an initiative to get that music program back up and running.
Oh, cool.
And so they had a music teacher there. I don't know if he had been there. I think it was his first or second year, so very new. And we went down there on a weekly basis to teach lessons and play for the students. So those were the two things that we kind of started out of. It wasn't really anything more than that at the very start. But with all these having 32 pieces written for us, I mean, there were just kind of a series of things that we took full advantage of all these different opportunities, but we were also kind of in the right place at the right time doing through this program.
Right. Okay. That's cool. And so, did other people start ensembles too during that project?
I don't know if I'm actually unsure if there are. I mean, I don't know of any other groups that have formed and stayed together.
Yeah, that was really my question. Like, I wonder how common it is to start a group in college and then keep it up and running, and essentially make a business out of it, which is what you're doing.
Yeah, I don't know of many groups. I mean, there are definitely groups out there that are doing similar things. Lots of string quartets and woodwind groups. I'm not aware of other brass groups, but that does not mean that they're not out there.
Right. No, yeah, because I feel like it seems a little unusual that people would continue after college. So I think that's really one of the cool things about the Brass Project, that you guys are still going strong, and you're done with Curtis. And what about the rest of your group? Are they all graduated?
Three of us are graduated. Three are still in at Curtis. One is in his final year. Mm-hmm. And then two of the members actually live in New York. One is getting his master's at Juilliard, and the other one is kind of living with his wife, who is a violinist for New York Philharmonic.
Oh.
So they commute down to Philly, which it's not too far. It's about 2 hours. Mm-hmm. And so we've made that work. And I think next year, I mean, who knows? There are always chances of people moving around, winning some jobs, but we're hoping that it'll be the same situation next year.
Yeah, and that's good to know that, it actually is possible. You guys are making it work even when people aren't all in the same city. So that's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So kind of switching gears here for a second. When we talked, because it's so interesting that you've got this, and we'll talk more about what else you're doing besides the Brass Project right now.
Sure.
But
yeah.
One of the things that I found so interesting in our first talk was that you had said that you were never sold on the orchestra path, like 100%. Not to say that you wouldn't ever want to play in an orchestra, but like that whole idea of like, this is what I'm going for, and I'm going to do that, forever. So what caused you to question that path for yourself?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting question. I mean, I think I started questioning that very early on. I'd say starting in high school. Mm-hmm. In high school, I played in the Chicago Youth Symphony, like you.
Yeah.
Which is so cool. And I started that my sophomore year in high school. And so I'm from northern Indiana, a small mm-hmm. town called Goshen, which is not too far from Elkhart, where a lot of our instruments are made.
Yeah.
And so it was a bit of a commute. It was every weekend I'd take the train. I'd drive to South Bend, take the train from South Bend to Chicago, and round trip it was about 7 hours.
Wow.
So it was, looking back, it's a ton of time traveling, but I mean, I loved it. I enjoyed it so much. And, there were some really long days, But Chicago Youth Symphony really kind of opened up my eyes to what is out there and what's possible,
Mm-hmm.
and just, you know, playing incredible. I just remember some of those concerts playing right from the start, just being so inspiring. And so I loved playing in orchestra. I love orchestral music, but from very early on, I think maybe I wasn't sold on the orchestral path just due to some basic things like it's so competitive. There are so many incredible qualified musicians out there, and wondering if I would be good enough for that, and just kind of being ultra realist in terms
Yeah.
of, like, I mean, it's so competitive. Am I good enough?
Yeah.
I think that's a big part of it.
That's so realistic and so unusual to be that realistic at such an early age, because I was just sort of, I love this. I want to do it for the rest of my life without like really looking
Yeah,
at what that meant. And it's true. There's so, if you play the trumpet, there's two trumpets or three or four, some orchestras have
yeah,
four,
depending on
but
the orchestra, right?
depending on the orchestra. So smaller orchestras don't have as many, and it's crazy when you think about
And there
it.
are
Like,
more and more people who are unbelievable musicians. I mean, every day there's someone who's like someone. It seems like there's someone new, and the level of playing in the United States and around the world is just, it's crazy.
yeah.
And so, I mean, I think those were the main reasons. I think also I, as I progressed and went to Indiana University for my undergrad, I think I started to question. I mean, I always, like, it's always been a dream to play with an orchestra, and I think if I were given the chance, I think I would love to do it. And it's certainly not giving up on that at all. I'm still planning on taking some auditions. But it's also, you hear about more and more people who are unhappy playing in orchestra,
Yep.
due to, many different things. Like, yeah, you're playing Beethoven's Fifth for the 30th time, and
Hmm.
I mean, it's hard to imagine, I think, until you're actually there.
Yeah.
But I think I've like always questioned, do I want to play in an orchestra because that's seen as successful, or do I actually want that?
Wow, that's a really great question. That is amazing.
That's kind of been the struggle for years, and I don't have an answer for that. I mean, like I said, I would love to play in an orchestra, and if I were given the chance, and um, if I were offered a position, I think I would love to do that for part of my career. But
But that's a great question to ask yourself
yeah,
that I think a lot of people don't. I didn't. Do I want this because it's seen as successful or it's because I really, really want it? I mean,
it's tough. I mean, that there's so much emphasis, and things are changing nowadays, in the music world, where that's you interviewed Mary Javian a while back, and
yeah.
she's the perfect example of someone who has made an unbelievable career and impact to many people. And she's a first call sub for Philly Orchestra and plays there, at least one concert cycle a month usually.
Hmm.
But she also has so many different projects going,
Yeah.
and I think when I got to Curtis, I mean, she was definitely someone who was incredibly inspiring to see that there are other possibilities. Um,
That's great.
so yeah,
Yeah, that's great that you had the opportunity to be around somebody who had created something so different. I think a lot of times, at least for me, all the mentors I had one job, and it was
yeah,
an amazing job, and then I just made that was the only possibility. And really, it's especially now, like you said, things are changing, and so it's becoming that there are more choices. than
There
just,
are,
yeah,
absolutely.
and more ways to be quote unquote successful. And honestly, like when you say that, whose definition is that? Is that like the world's, or is it like your colleagues? You know what I mean? Like if
Right,
you're that
absolutely.
concerned about it, 99% of the people don't know if you play a trumpet that you're only successful if you get into, the top 5 orchestras. They don't even know that there are 5 orchestra. Like most people don't, like if you
Yeah,
think of a worldview, that's what's so interesting. So I think it's
right.
really great that you were so open to inquiring into it a lot more deeply than most people, at your age or just really at any age, to be honest.
Huh.
So yeah. So
Yeah.
so when you were at Indiana, did you know? So you said you were starting to have these inquiries going starting in high school and college. So did you explore the curriculum at IU, or did you really stick with the major? Like what did you do
Yeah,
when you were
well, I
there?
mean, I think Indiana has a program called Project Jumpstart, which is deals with career entrepreneurship,
Uh-huh.
that sort of deal. And so I certainly did attend those events and found those very interesting, but I don't think I didn't apply it to where I was
Right.
at the time. I think the I still went to Indiana for my undergrad and was just trying to focus on like how do I improve. I loved my teacher, John Rommel, great trumpeter and teacher, and so I was just trying to get the most from him. And it's a huge school, and there were a lot of really unbelievable trumpeters and just overall musicians there.
Yeah.
So trying to take advantage of that. But I also was going through and thinking about like what are some other possibilities. I think one big thing, big experience that was important for me happened in high school. I think my final year, where I had the opportunity to perform a side-by-side concert with the Simon Bolivar Youth Orchestra from Venezuela,
Oh, okay.
which
So that was in high school. I remember that you told
Salvador.
me about that, but I didn't know it was in high
Yeah.
school. So yeah, tell me about that.
So that really, so we were selected out of a group of musicians. We auditioned, and the Simon Bolivar Youth Orchestra was coming to perform a concert at Symphony Center, and they were going to play a side-by-side concert with a select group of musicians. So we rehearsed for that several times before they came. We played, I think, final movement of Mahler's First Symphony and Overture to Candide,
Oh, wow.
and so then they came. We had a morning rehearsal with them, and led by Maestro Dudamel, and then we performed the concert. I think there must have been 120 people on stage, and it was pretty equal in terms of Chicagoans and Venezuelans, and it blew my mind. It was unbelievable, just the passion that orchestra played with. And they call it a youth orchestra. There were a lot who were there were people who were 30, and I think they've changed it now, so it's no longer, they've dropped the youth orchestra part of it, and it's Simon Bolivar Symphony.
Oh, really? So it's not youth anymore.
I mean, they certainly have their youth orchestras, but I
Okay.
think the Simon Bolivar is now their professional symphony orchestra, and I
Oh,
think they
okay.
still tour and whatnot.
Do
But
they still do the
I mean,
side by side thing?
oh, I'm sure they do. I mean, that's where I really I think my first glance into El Sistema as a model for music education,
Mm-hmm.
and that's really, I mean, we didn't speak. Some of them spoke English, and some of us spoke a little Spanish, but there was very little communicating happening other than trying to communicate.
Yeah.
But what was so fascinating was like you know just the level of commitment and being able to express a shared vision through music. And
Right.
so that was fascinating. So after that I was very interested in El Sistema as a model.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and so back 4 years later, I was in my final year at Indiana. Personally, I didn't feel like I was in a spot with my trumpet playing to be auditioning for grad schools. And so I was kind of a mess my senior year.
Really?
It was, I thought about either taking a year off or doing something related to El Sistema. And so that senior year, I prepared a Fulbright grant proposal to study the Colombian version of El Sistema called El Batuta.
Oh, so there's more than one version of it in South America.
That's right.
I
That's
didn't even
right.
know
And
that.
I think Venezuela helped Colombia set it up. I don't know the date, maybe in the 80s. It started in Venezuela in the 70s. But, in Venezuela, there are, I don't know, over 400,000 youth who are involved in these youth orchestras and choirs around the country. So, and just hearing stories about, what it was doing for their communities, taking kids who otherwise would have been on the street, and now they're spending hours each day together creating music.
That's
And
amazing.
it was so inspiring. So I knew that I wanted to be involved in some version of that. So I kind of
So let me interrupt you just for a second.
yeah.
So you said that you were a real mess your senior year, but it sounds like you were really inspired by something. So what caused that mess feeling?
Oh, I think it's back to feeling like in order to be successful, you have to be an orchestra, and I didn't feel
Right.
like I was good enough.
Okay. So there was like some
But
struggle
also,
going on there with
it was
your
it was definitely a struggle.
uh-huh.
Absolutely.
Okay. That's good to hear actually, not to say that I'm glad that you felt the struggle, but most people really do struggle with that. I know I did, and
Yeah.
it's an identity thing. So it sounds like that's what you're going through during your senior year.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's so easy. Like my senior year, it's so easy to define yourself based on your playing,
Mm,
and it's so much so that you don't even, you know, feel like you're a musician. It's more like I'm a trumpeter who can't do blah blah blah.
uh-huh.
And so I felt incredibly limited, um, just because I was holding myself back. So it's interesting to look back at that now, and I feel like I'm still dealing with certain aspects of that, but it's over the past couple of years. It's a few years. I mean, it's taken. I feel like I'm in a totally different place, better place than where I was. But that's a hard spot to be in.
Oh yeah.
Ending 4 years of studying, paying lots of money to go to school, and feeling like you're no good at what you went to study.
Yeah. Yeah. And you don't feel ready, but you just did 4 years. And so now you're like, okay, what now? I'm
Right.
tired of school because I've been in it since kindergarten. So that's
Yeah.
like,
Oh my
you
gosh.
know, 12, 16 years in a row,
Yes.
really, of being in school. And yeah, I know. And so you were like you were feeling that, but then you were contemplating having a gap year. So what did you like take me back to that day that it was the last day of school and you're going home?
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, or fortunately, looking back, I'm not really sure, but I did not get chosen for the Fulbright grant.
Okay.
And so that was pretty devastating, because that was kind of what I was going for, and I knew it was kind of a long shot, but
So why was it
uh,
a long shot? Were there a lot of people competing for it or?
yeah, definitely, it's very very competitive. It's also just hard to know. I mean, it's it's a lot of that's really out of your control in terms of those proposals for Fulbright,
Right.
especially for the ones where you're designing your own research program. And so it kind of depends on the relationship with the organizations, and who knows? I don't really know.
So were you going to go to Columbia for that?
So I had a proposal that where I would live in Colombia for a year and study batuta
Oh.
and teach there, and I'm honestly, I can't even remember everything that was was in the proposal, but that's the basic premise. So that did not happen. I was planning on living at home for a year back in northern Indiana. That summer, after I graduated, I attended Aspen Music Festival in Colorado, and so I knew that I had that to look forward to, and you hope that something will pop up, and I was fortunate enough that something did. So it was the final 2 or 3 weeks. It's an 8-week festival, and the final 2 or 3 weeks, there was an opening. One of the master's students studying at Colburn in Los Angeles decided not to return under a very short notice.
Oh, and you had already filled out an application?
I actually hadn't applied even. I didn't apply to grad schools, but there was another trumpeter from Colburn studying at Aspen, and he heard last minute that one of the students wasn't going to return, and he's like, Caleb, you're not doing anything next year. Would you be interested in this? If so, contact Jim Wilt, the teacher out there.
Wow.
So I was kind of freaking out in my head, like, whoa. So I contacted the teacher, contacted Jim, and sent in some audition materials. And within, I think it was around a week, I went from, planning to move back to Indiana to driving out to Los Angeles with my brother.
Wow.
On a road trip. So
that's exciting. That's a quick change.
Very, very unexpected. Yeah.
Yeah, Goshen, Indiana to Los Angeles. That's a big change.
It's kind of a different country out there.
Yeah.
Very, very cool, and but very different.
Yeah. So at Colburn, were you really focused on making those improvements on the trumpet, or were you starting to think still about how the El Sistema was interesting to you, or like where were you?
Yeah, I think I really just felt like it was an incredible opportunity that offered me extra time. Looking back, I think if I would have moved home, I honestly don't know if I would still be playing trumpet at this time.
Oh, really?
I kind of, I don't know. I kind of have a feeling that maybe I would have found something else, or looking back, I don't really know. But having an added year studying at Colburn, where it was just an unbelievable environment, where there's maybe 140 students in the school, and the orchestra there sounded unbelievable. And working with Jim Wilt, I think that was definitely a highlight. I learned so much from him. He's such an incredible teacher, and he's a member of LA Phil. And so I tried to take full advantage of that opportunity, learning everything I could from him, and attending orchestra concerts. I think I went almost every week
Nice.
to LA Phil. But I also was starting to explore some other options, maybe even if not intentionally. LA is a great place to explore El Sistema, because Gustavo Dudamel is there as the music director, and there's also the Youth Orchestra of Los Angeles, or YOLA, which is an El Sistema inspired initiative of the LA Phil. So I volunteered there for the year, and
cool.
I taught trumpet lessons and master classes, and would play there with their wind ensemble rehearsals.
Okay. So was
Saturday.
this the start of your getting into teaching artistry? Like,
I think, yeah. Right then I didn't necessarily know that, but I was interested in El Sistema, and I was like, well, naturally I should take advantage of this while I'm in LA.
yeah.
And so definitely, I think to get some experience, opening experience into that, and practical experience. I didn't have very much teaching experience before that. So it was a great place to start that.
Yeah, and so smart to realize, hey, you know what, I'm here, and this is he's how everyone knows about El Sistema, really, Gustavo Dudamel,
Absolutely.
you
Oh,
know.
for sure. Yeah.
So it's so great that you were able to get there. It's sort of like synchronicity that you ended up there,
Right.
considering that you had already had that interest in El Sistema. So
Yeah.
it's cool. So then what happened? I mean, then I know that you mentioned already that you were at Curtis. So then you
Right.
transferred to Curtis, or you
Yeah.
did.
So then I ended up moving home after that year.
Okay, because it was a
I
1 year program.
It was a 1 year.
Uh-huh.
I was there for 1 year, and I moved home back to Indiana, and figured that finally this was going to be the year that I had to figure out what I wanted to do, and see. I don't know. I
Yeah. So were you in a
just
better place this time on your way back to Goshen?
I think I was definitely in a better place. It was still not a great place, I think. It's just still so hard. I think I was still in a place where I defined myself based on how I was playing,
Oh,
and I even after 1 year there, I made a lot of progress, but I still didn't feel like I was in a place that I wanted to be.
yeah.
Uh, just it's hard, and there were certain aspects of my playing that just were not coming together. And so I think I moved back. It was May, and the final month of school in Goshen, I worked in the school district as a substitute teacher for kindergarten through 12th grade, which was very interesting. I learned a lot, even in that 1 month of just like you go into these classes and have no idea what you're supposed to do for the day, but. So I finished that up, and then I worked at the public library in our town for a couple months, and actually really enjoyed my time there. It was actually really nice to step away from music and just be around completely different people who are just all just all really nice.
I love how
Um,
you had a good attitude about it all the time, you know? I mean, I think that's really great that you were like, well, I'm doing this now and this
yeah, I
I
mean,
can learn
I
something
think
here.
it was not always easy, if that's how it sounds, because it definitely wasn't.
Yeah.
But I think treating it as an opportunity to figure things out, and I knew that this was temporary. I wasn't going to be here long term. I figured a year, and then even if I wasn't going to do trumpet, I figured I would probably move somewhere else, and try and figure something out.
Uh-huh.
But it so then that was a couple months later, and we are now in August of, let's see, 2015, August of 2015. And there was this horrible tragedy. A brass quintet from Curtis was on fellowship at Aspen Music Festival, and two of the members on their way home after the festival were tragically killed in a car accident.
Mm.
And so, I mean, I even though I didn't know them personally, it affected me deeply. Um, and I had been following the quintet there that summer, because it was, I had been to Aspen the summer before,
Hmm.
and they were doing really cool stuff, and it just really hit close to home. Um, just someone the same age
Yeah.
as me, and I had mutual friends who were roommates with some of them, and so it was horrible.
Yeah.
But about 2 weeks after that, I think I received an email from Dave Bilger, the principal trumpet of Philadelphia Orchestra and teacher at Curtis, describing the situation and saying that they needed someone to fill the spot. And he had gotten my name from Jim Wilt in Los Angeles, my teacher
Mm.
there. So it was, I mean, it was just such a mixed emotions receiving that. I mean, it was under such horrible circumstances.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it was, I had another year to work and make progress. and move away from home. So
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, 2 weeks later, I moved to Philly.
Wow. Wow. There's like a theme of just changing the ship's course just on a moment's notice
Yeah, yeah.
sometimes.
Well, and
But
that's where, looking back, like if had I gotten a Fulbright grant and been living in Columbia, none of that would have ever happened.
mm-hmm.
So I think through these experiences, I think I've learned to kind of trust that something will happen as long as you're working really hard. You're nice to people.
Mm-hmm.
You make you make the most out of every opportunity that you're given.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, but definitely very mixed emotions taking on that role.
Yeah, I bet. I bet. Well, so and it was all I mean, I bet you that felt pretty important though. Like, okay, now I have to go there and fill some shoes and be great at what I'm doing there,
Absolutely.
you know?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And
So,
and going there, I think I was surprised. I mean, at just how supportive the Curtis community was.
mhm.
Um, I mean, I had reservations about stepping into shoes like that, but I think no one else gave me any reason to question that. I mean, everyone was so incredibly supportive and understanding about that it was a difficult situation to step into.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah.
Wow. Wow. So then you told us about Curtis and you started the brass project with it, which is so amazing. And so what have you been doing, this past year?
Well, this past year, so I finished my year at Curtis, and so I'll tell you about what I've been doing, and then also what the brass project has been doing. So
Yeah.
so me, what I've been doing is working through a rather new service organization, national service organization called Artist Year. And it just recently, I think this year is the first year that it's funded through AmeriCorps. And it's the first national service organization dedicated exclusively to the arts.
Mhm.
So recent graduates from music, dance, visual arts are placed into a school, elementary through high school, some school, for 1 year. And right now it started in Philadelphia. Now last year it expanded or this year it's expanded to New York City and Colorado. And so it's an incredible program, and was started actually by a Curtis alum, Margot Dracos, who is unbelievable woman and very inspiring. And so I was working at an elementary school in Philadelphia where I was teaching recorder students. I actually had 65 recorder students from second to fourth grade,
Wow.
which was wild.
That's
um,
interesting. Oh my gosh. So that was your post essentially through Artist Year.
that was my post for 1 year, and it was not what I expected when I agreed to do Artist Year. I was expecting to be placed in maybe a high school or middle school where I'd be teaching brass or trumpet or
Yeah,
at least
band.
band or
Yeah.
something that I knew something about. And so I was pretty surprised when I was placed in an elementary school. But it ended up being such an incredible experience, and I was there 4 days a week and all day. And so I really, by the end of the year, I was a regular member of the community.
Oh.
And it's an incredibly special school. They've got just great teachers there, and it's just the community there is pretty fantastic. So just to have that much time in the classroom, like trying to figure out how to interact with these young students was a great experience. And it's tough. I mean, trying to engage a group of second graders, I will tell you that they do not act interested if they are not.
That's funny. So did they have a reason, I mean, to put you in that situation? Was there some reasoning behind it? You know, considering that you said you're expected to be teaching brass, and I would expect that too if I signed up, like, here I am, I play horn.
Yeah.
You're going to put me in a situation where I'm teaching horn players. So was there something behind that where they said, you know, you'd be really, you know, maybe they thought your personality would be good for that, or how did they figure out where to put you?
Well, I think they try and find matches, find that what they want ultimately is to develop a relationship between the teaching fellow and the school that is good for both parties.
Oh.
So that we established that this school would be good, and I had one other artist year fellow, a visual artist, who worked at the school as well. So it was great. We were able to kind of, we both knew all the students, and were able to talk about different situations and how we would handle different students and different situations. So that was good. And I think, you know, like I was very surprised when that happened, but ultimately I'm very glad, because I think it taught me, you know, like as musicians, we expect that we can only do what we have been trained to do. And, you know, I mentioned this earlier, but I felt like I was, you know, only a trumpet player and sometimes not even a musician. And this, to go into a completely new setting, doing something that I'm not trained in at all, and I'm okay. I survived, and I learned so much through the experience. And so what it's taught me is, you can enter these experiences. We can, as musicians, there are so many skills that we just take for granted, and that we can do so much more than what we think. I think. And so I think that was the big takeaway of my artist year.
That's awesome. Wow. Yeah, that's and I agree. We, you know, when you're learning one instrument, you start to believe that, like, that's your thing that you do and that's it. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, I for sure did. I'll tell you that much.
You're spending hours in a practice room by yourself, you know, aiming for perfection. Like, is this good enough to put out in public to affect people? And, you know, here at the elementary school, I had no choice. Early on, I would spend hours on these lesson plans trying to imagine, from the time that they walked in, everything that would happen until the time that they left. And
Were you ever right?
Very early on, I was never right. No. It just doesn't work like that, especially with elementary school kids.
So how did that like that realization impact the way you think of performance? I mean, I wonder if it did.
Yeah. Well, I learned I'm still very uncomfortable in improvisatory settings, but I'm much more through teaching at an elementary school for 1 year. I had to do that on a daily basis. Go into things. I knew what I wanted to accomplish, but how I was going to get there was dependent on the kids. And I realized that I could actually make a bigger change. I could affect greater change to these students by being flexible, by, you know, making a change in the lesson plan. If they're not paying attention and I'm not, that's my problem. Like I need to change something that I'm doing to make it reach them. And so there were times where I'd just be like, all right, we're not going to spend any more time on hot cross buns today. We're done with hot cross buns. Everyone I would pull out my my metronome on my phone, which they thought was like the coolest thing they'd ever seen. Set it to 80 beats per minute, and everyone would get 10 clicks to make up whatever they wanted on their recorder. And so just like random things like that was just kind of a spur of the moment. Like, we knew that we needed to stop doing what we were doing because we were not making progress. So I think you're back to your original question of how does that affect performing? I mean, I'm still trying to figure that out, but I know that it has helped in, I want to get to the same point where there is that sort of flexibility in the music making that you can kind of read the audience and figure out what needs to change based on that.
That's awesome.
And that's hard, and I can't say that I am there yet. I mean, I have no idea. I think that's a constant learning process.
Yeah. It's a little bit like a comedian. That's what makes me think of that's what I think of immediately when you say that. Like a comedian standing up there, if they see that the audience is not having a good time or not laughing, they gotta do something about that,
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that's so on to the brass project. This year, actually the past 2 years, we were fortunate to be in residence at a chamber music festival in New Mexico called Music from Angel Fire.
Great.
And there, it's in a small town in rural New Mexico, northern New Mexico, in the mountains at 8,000 feet, very close to Taos. And there they have a professional chamber music festival every summer, where they've got these top chamber musicians from around the country that go there, and then each year they have two chamber music groups. So the years that we've been at, it's a string quartet, and I guess last year there was also a string trio, and then us, the brass project. Uh-huh. And so a big component of what the young artists do are going around to schools in very rural New Mexico and giving interactive performances. Cool. And so over the past 2 years, in New Mexico alone, we've given over 80 school concerts.
Wow, that's a lot.
It is a lot. And it's given us a great chance to develop our practice into interacting with the audience. Mm-hmm. I think that's one of the big things for us. Another very inspirational group for us is Time for Three, a string trio that you may have heard of.
Yes.
They formed also out of Curtis, and they were actually the opening act our first year at Music from Angel Fire. So we saw them, and the way that they interact with the audience, I mean, they're just, first of all, they're unbelievable performers, and just doing some really ingenious things in terms of what they're performing. But then the way that they interact with people was what is so inspiring. I mean, they're just up there. It's like they're talking to the audience as if about their day, just simple things that happened.
Yeah.
And that was kind of really, really great to see. And we saw that, and we're like, well, that's how we want to relate to audiences as well.
That's so cool. It sounds like they're a big inspiration for you guys.
They are, definitely.
That's awesome. That's very cool. So what's next for the brass project now? I assume you're going back there again?
Well, so we've I don't think we're going back. We've been there for 2 summers. A lot of times groups are just there 1 summer, so we felt lucky to get to do it 2 years. We, over the past year, we have given recitals at we played at National Sawdust in Brooklyn, which is this really, really cool music venue.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
They do a lot of new music, and I think, it's a few years old, up and coming for sure. And so we're trying to find venues to perform recitals. We're trying to find more educational residencies and collaborations. So I think one of the exciting projects on the horizon is a collaboration with a friend of mine, a trumpeter I actually studied with at Colburn, who is also an astrophysicist and getting his PhD in astrophysics at Northwestern in Chicago. So we're hoping to work with him to create this unique space show based around the Hubble telescope. And Nick DiBerardino, our seventh member, is going to create the music, and then Kyle Kramer, the astrophysicist, will create these awesome high, like just really cool outer space presentation with high-tech visualizations and narration that we can then take to, I mean, who knows what I think there are a lot of places that we could perform those, schools, but also museums, and I think, so we're pretty excited about that if that pans out. So
that sounds great. That sounds really great. So is there anything you want to promote right now?
Yeah, I think two things. One would be Artist Year.
Okay.
And so that's one word, artistyear.org. You can find more information about that. I had an unbelievable experience with that, and I think it was, it was definitely life-changing. And so I would encourage anyone who, finds that interesting to check it out.
Yeah, it'll definitely be in the show notes. I'll put the link there in the show notes. Great. Yeah, for everything you've mentioned, the brass
wonderful.
project, and
cool.
all the stuff. I'll put everything in there so people can just link out of the show notes. End up at least in iTunes. They're just like a little the little eye, you press it, and then you'll have links.
You can find it there. And
yep.
The second thing would be we're very excited about our the Brass Project's debut album called Cityscaping, which will be released this spring, and will include our favorites from the 32 miniatures that were written for us over the last.
Very cool. And will that be available on iTunes too?
I think it will. Yes.
Very cool. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Caleb, thank you so much for being on the show today. I'm so excited. You were just the perfect person to launch the Starting Line series and hear all about your path up until this point. And we'll have to keep in touch so that I can keep up with the Brass Project
Tracy,
and everything.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a great time, and I'm honored to be here. So
thank you so much. All right. Well, thanks for joining us, everyone, and we'll see you next time. Bye. Thank you for listening today. Hey, listen, I have a huge favor to ask you, and it will only take a few seconds. If you like this show, one way that you can let us know is by writing a review on iTunes and subscribing to the podcast. Writing a review will help other people to find the podcast and help us immensely. It will only take a few minutes. Just head over to iTunes and search for Crushing Classical. There, you can write a review and click subscribe. Thanks again.